Alright then. 3, 2, 1. How do you do, kind folks?
Which kind?
Slam and Skits back together again. This
That's
is
right.
our spooky episode. Ooh!
It's going to be
Caw.
haunted.
Cinemassacre's Monster Madness.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah.
Indeed. But anyway,
Almost like
we're recording this early, but it's going to be coming out hopefully during the third week of October, aka Halloween week, or
Yes,
supposedly.
by the time you kind folks see it kindly.
Yeah. But other than me, son, how you doing?
Yes, sir. Pretty common, pretty kind. Yeah, life's not too bad these days. Saving up some funds, trying to sell some circuit boards.
Indeed. You gonna go trick or treating?
Not one bit, but they will probably come visit us.
You
And be like, trick or
although it's not unlawful
Yep.
to go trick or treating if
no,
you're
not at all,
20 years old or above,
or more.
supposedly.
Yep.
But yeah, you probably die from a lot of that candy there, son.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of rapper observation, and that's it. I would just look at it on the table when it's all done.
And you probably smell it.
And that would be the end of it. And I could not go any further than the scent.
I mean, you could hear it. I mean,
I guess so, yeah.
you could technically hear it if you really wanted to. Like
I
you
could.
you
It
can
would-
drop the candy on the table, just hear it.
Yep,
it fall.
examining the properties.
Yeah, but anyway, though,
Yeah,
kind
man.
folks, this Halloween, we're going to decipher something that's been on our minds for quite a long time, and we haven't yet been able to decipher it until right now. And that is Universal Monsters Collection, aka the first cinematic universe.
The classics that are Jurassics at
Oh,
this
yes.
point. Basically.
Son, what is your
Nope.
experience with the Universal Monsters?
Well, some names come to mind, like Bela Lugosi,
I mean,
the
yeah,
legend of back in the day.
who had a
Boris
tragic,
Karloff.
downfall, unfortunately, which we'll get into.
Yes, Boris K. as well.
yeah,
The ultimate Karloff.
the ultimate Frankenstein, if you will,
Frankenstein. Yeah.
and
exactly. His monster, of course.
actually, he's a bunch of monsters, which we'll get into as well.
I could also see that.
But yeah, anything else?
Bleh, bleh. That's probably where Dracula got the bleh, bleh from, but that was not actually
The blah blah blah.
Bram. The Bram himself, or Brahm, he never had anything to do with that.
Yeah,
Yeah. And the actual Dracula from Bram looks different. What is it? Norris Veratu or whatever it's called?
Nosferatu. Yes.
Nosferatu, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah. A lot more bald, kind of like a bald Bane.
Oh.
Minus the mask.
Oh, we'll get into Batman.
Will we?
Don't you?
Will we?
Oh yes. It's quite extensive. So here's the thing.
Yeah.
Let me
Yes, sir.
dive into this because I'm kind of a movie head, and you're a horror head because you like horror movies more often than not, and me
wouldn't
not
say
so much.
head.
What?
I wouldn't say horror enthusiast or horror head, but I mean, I appreciate it. But I'm not like a hardcore fanatic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm less so because I don't like being scared. But
Yeah.
these are different. Why? Because as horror is kind of like comedy. Once it ages, it doesn't. I mean, it gets less scary as time goes on, which is interesting to say the least. But it's true. It's like comedy. I mean, something that's funny in 1947, like Miracle on 34th Street, which is technically a comedy, it wouldn't necessarily gain a whole bunch of laughs from a lot of the contemporary people of today.
True.
But anyway, Universal Monsters, the original cinematic universe.
That is true.
And also, to be quite fair, they didn't initially pitch it as a cinematic universe either. I mean, there's actually far less cinematic universe crossovers that we know about today. In fact, they kind of started a little bit later, but
yes, kindly.
And there's a lot. These lists, what classifies as a universal classic monster, it kind of depends on the list, because although Universal made a lot of monster movies, some make the cut and some don't. But we're just going to dive into all of them. Not all of the monster movies, of course, but that Universal's made. But we're going to dive into most of them, and a lot of them that normally don't make the list, but a lot of them that should be on the list.
Well,
dive into a lot of the ages here. We're just going to go by decade, because the decade kind of constitutes the age, if you will. So
yeah, that is true.
Yeah, it's kind of like a sort of like Simpsons in a way, or more or less Disney animation. Every decade there's a different age.
Oh, yes.
But anyway,
yes.
With that being said, time to go with the first couple, which are the 20s. Now, the history of horror there's been a highly debated about what constitutes as the first horror film, really. Because as soon as there was film, there was horror. I can't really dive into a whole lot of that because it's not necessarily in my forte, if you will, but I do know the first monster movie that we know about today was not, at least one of them, maybe not the pure definition, but it was the first one to come on the scene, was Nosferatu, aka Dracula, but from a different country, so it's called Nosferatu.
Ah. Uh-huh.
And yeah, that was released in 1922. And it's an unofficial adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So they had to change a whole lot from the original source material because of copyright issues. Because copyright also existed in that time as well. But I don't think... Oh, okay, so this is a German film, actually. German expressionist horror film. And it kind of set the stage for... It kind of set the stage for a lot of horror that would come later on. Like, there's a lot of interesting cinematography.
Yeah.
A lot of dark shadows.
Wowzers again.
Indeed. There's a lot of different interesting pieces here that would come to define the monster movie itself and horror as a genre. And to be perfectly honest with you, we're not really reviewing this one, but I think it's pretty interesting and should be studied, and it has been studied. I was in film classes a lot in college, and we studied this film fairly heavily. Not a whole lot, but fairly heavily, if you will. Son, I know you probably haven't heard of Nosferatu before the creation of this podcast.
I have actually.
Oh, you have?
Where you brought the term to my attention.
Indeed.
And I always associate that naturally with its pinball counterpart, Bram Stoker's Dracula pinball table, going up in value indeed, kind folks. JSYK, but yes.
So the first thing that's different about most of these films is that this is a silent film, so you really
makes sense.
They really had to focus on the visuals rather than a lot of the sound and stuff like that. It is in the public domain.
Cool. Like the mouse is almost.
Oh yes, next year actually, but that we're gonna go down a rabbit hole. But I'm just gonna talk about this real fast because it kind of interests me a little. So it's kind of interesting. Just a quick detour here, but Disney actually made a short with modern Mickey Mouse talking with Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse to try to curve the copyright toward them, I guess. I don't know if they can. I mean, technically, they can only use Steamboat Willie. Everyone can upload Steamboat Willie, but I don't know if they put Steamboat Willie in another short new. I don't know if they can actually copyright it. They're going to try everything in their power to do that. And also, Steamboat Willie's in their trademark, so if you hear the you upload the whistle, then you're going to get copyright stricken. So I have no idea how that's going to transpire, but they are trying everything in their power to curve the copyright. But anyway, enough about that. Enough about non-universal horror. Nosferatu.
Yeah. Nosfi.
Yeah, this is not Dracula. This is actually named Count Orlok.
Count Orlok. I like that better, actually. That's pretty badass.
Yeah. It's actually pretty interesting. I would dare say that is a German name.
That is also true.
And surprisingly enough, this has stood the test of time. Nosferatu has been in multiple movies, including one from 1979, and one that's going to be released with Willem Dafoe as Nosferatu himself. You know who Willem Dafoe is?
Yes-ish.
He's the Green Goblin from Spider-Man.
There we go. Now I know who he is.
He is going to be Nosferatu. And a running joke through the SpongeBob fandom.
SquarePants!
Nosferatu appears in SpongeBob SquarePants just randomly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But he flicks the lights on a horror episode, and then they're all like, Nosferatu! And Nosferatu smiles and all that, and that's the end of the episode.
What?
Yeah.
Must be New Age Sponge.
It's great. But unfortunately, SpongeBob, they extended Nosferatu's stay in the SpongeBob canon, and he appears more in the SpongeBob SquarePants universe, and actually is, I don't know if he's a main character. He's like a main character, supporting character, or just pops in and out whenever he wants to, whenever. But I know he's in it a lot more in that SpongeBob CGI show, Under Years or whatever, Camp Coral.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about that.
Yeah, Nosferatu's in that show. I don't know why, but
okay then.
Very interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
But anyway, that basically triggered a huge avalanche of monster stuff here. Like, I guess it was, I think it's I think it did really well in the box office and stuff like that. Let me see here. And Nosferatu actually entered the public domain by the end of 2019, so it's actually fairly recently. So that's pretty interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, there's a huge legacy with Nosferatu and all that, so I assume... Let's see if we can find box office numbers. I highly doubt it. And I can't find that. But I would assume that it's pretty successful, to say the least.
Yeah.
Because, of course, if something's popular from outside America, American companies are going to take notes, and they're going to make their own.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And of course, they started in the 20s with The Hunchback of Notre Dame from Universal. So Universal, I guess, was like, Nosferatu's popular, we gotta make our own horror movies and stuff like that. Using almost the same tricks. And it's from the, let's see if I can find some more stuff here about it. Let's see here. It was so this actually comes from a book, of course, and almost like most like monster movies that we'll come to know and love in this. It comes from a book. This one's fairly old though. This one's from like the 1850s or whatever, like 1700s. The same person who wrote The Hunchback of Notre Dame actually wrote Les Mis. Not the musical, but the extremely long book.
Oh no. That makes the whole thing even worse.
Yeah, and The Hunchback of Notre Dame is not necessarily about the Hunchback of Notre Dame. It's about Notre Dame.
And
like 80% of the book, I'm exaggerating, of course, but like 80% of the book is mostly describing the entirety of the church, and that's it. There's hardly any plot related to the Hunchback himself.
That sounds so bad that it sounds like something I would somehow be forced to read, and I would just not like it.
For architects, it's the best book of all time. But
I guess so, but not what you'd expect.
But for the regular reader, it's not necessarily the best. But yeah, I mean, everyone knows The Hunchback of Notre Dame thanks to Disney, which is surprising because a Universal monster from was made into a Disney animated film, and one of the best Disney animated films, to be quite honest with you, in my opinion at least, because there's a lot of Catholic stuff in there, and that's all I'll say on that. But anyway.
Fair enough, for your sake.
But yeah, so anyway, though, there's actually a far less... We're not going to dive into every single film like The Hunchback of Notre Dame, but I think it's pretty interesting because this is the movie that kind of kicked off Universal Monsters right here. It was the first one. Lon Chaney, who played the Hunchback, also was the Phantom of the Opera.
That's cool.
2 years later.
Like real life actor.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, and we'll see that. We'll see that a lot. Let's be clear here. I mean, there's going to be a lot of actor turnover in these films, but
I can see that.
And here's, I mean, I think it comes down to like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 films in the 20s, which is really pretty interesting, to be quite honest with you. And Phantom of the Opera is another silent-ish film in regards to this. It was The Cat and the Canary, which I have never heard of, but 1927 was when the Jazz Singer came out, and incredibly racist today, but it also sparked the it also it was blackface, but it also sparked the talkie era, if you will. So The Cat and Canary, I would assume, was also talkie. But the last film that we're going to talk about, I mean, I'll just list off the films here: The Hunchback of Notre Dame, The Phantom of the Opera, The Cat and the Canary, The Man Who Laughs, Last Warning, and The Last Performance. And The Man Who Laughs is pretty interesting because this is where, let's see, I'm gonna get the correct names of these people: Bob Kane and Bill Finger, I think. Let me just double check real fast. Batman creator, Bob Kane and Bill Finger. Yes, okay, because Bill Finger, his family had to fight for his credit. But anyway, I think that's where Bill Finger, aka the creator of basically everything Batman, except for Batman the name. That's where he got the inspiration for the Joker, was through The Man Who Laughs. Because this monster is basically the Joker.
Yeah.
Except a lot less funny. And he's kind of just wears like a very creepy smile throughout the entire film. But it inspired the Joker. So that's where we get the Joker from.
What do you know?
And that's all I know from these particular films. The Phantom of the Opera, of course, is another monster film. It's not the musical. The musical takes a lot, does its own thing, basically. It is almost completely different in every single way. And also what's interesting here is that after the 20s, all these 60s, I don't know what I'm saying here. All these 6 1920s films, they don't get any sequels. There's no repetition here. It's all kind of set in its own little bubble here, which is pretty interesting. Next time we'll see the Phantom of the Opera really is through the musical, and that's it. So it's kind of interesting. What do you have to say about these list of films here, son? Anything stand out to you?
I mean, it's kind of interesting how a lot of things that we think about today, like the Joker, that it came from this, like all the way back in the day, pre-Batman.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Very cool.
Quite. Anything else you have to say about this, son?
That's mainly it. It's the start of something great.
It's the start of something new.
That's right, yes. All right, cool.
But yeah, so that was it of the 20s, and now we're on to the 30s. And the 30s is when we get the explosion that is Universal monster films, if you will. So we get, let me see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 films.
Wow. Not bad for back then.
Oh, yes. And let me see here. There's 4 that released in 1935,
Huh.
and another 3 that premiered in 1939 alone. So that's that's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
I think it's because,
Huh.
and I would consider this a sort of I would consider this kind of a thing with like a correlation with the depression and people wanting to escape the depression and being depressed.
Could be.
So they wanted to just be scared and all that type of stuff because
Ah.
horror, I mean, a lot of people want to get scared. A lot of people want to laugh. That's why, Shirley Temple exists for the most
Yeah.
part, not the little child or whatever that movie is where her father dies and she's a homeless orphan.
Ah.
I hate that movie. That gave me nightmares. But anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about horror films, if you will. So,
Yes.
one thing that comes to mind is, of course, Dracula with Bela Lugosi.
That is true.
The one that basically kicked it off. I mean, of course, there were, films that were, started it off technically in the 20s, but this is the one that kind of catapulted the Universal Monsters into, like, the premiere thing that everyone wanted to see, like the MCU, basically.
Ah. Yes. Of its day.
Oh, yes. Bela Lugosi at his finest,
Yeah.
who was basically he was Hungarian and basically gave Dracula his signature voice.
Oh.
It was because of him we get the blah 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 type of thing.
Funny.
Although he doesn't, I don't think he ever says blah blah blah, but
Good.
although that would be hilarious if he
That
did.
would be funny.
But yeah, we also got the Spanish version of Dracula.
It is a Dracula. I gotta see that one day.
Oh yes. I mean, I don't even know what the heck this is about. It's just on this list, but Carlos Villarreal is Dracula,
Look up
which
Carlos.
I gotta say, if a man named Carlos being Dracula,
That's awesome.
it's not no racism whatsoever, but I
Oh,
would expect a gigantic name, like a bigger than life name, to be Dracula instead of just instead of just a regular guy named Carlos. It's just kind of weird.
Oh yeah, that is pretty funny.
Yes, it is. But then we get some of the biggest names in horror itself. Frankenstein with Boris Karloff, The Mummy, not The Mummy with Brendan Fraser, but The Mummy with Boris Karloff again,
Naturally.
and who I guess did a lot of the Universal Monsters. He was the interchangeable person of the day, I guess. They wrap him up in toilet paper and he became the Mummy, I guess. I don't know.
Huh.
Then Murders in the Rue Morgue with Bela Lugosi. The Old Dark House with Boris Karloff again. And my personal interesting favorites of all these monster films, for the most part, The Invisible Man, which is a lot more nuanced than previously realized. Not in this film, but it's been made into other films that have been kind of pretty interesting. There was a recent film, which we'll get into, called The Invisible Man, where it's basically technology that transforms the person into like a invisible person, if you will. Basically like an invisibility cloak from Harry Potter or whatever. But
Yeah.
This Invisible Man was basically on like some kind of potion or something that turned him invisible and all that type of thing. It's actually kind of interesting. More of a. It was more horror, to say the least, instead of like sci-fi horror, I guess.
Huh.
The Black Cat with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, which I gotta say, that makes me wanting to see that right now. Also, The Raven with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, which is pretty interesting. We gotta see these two films.
When did they cross over with each other? I knew that had to happen somewhere.
We can barely hear you, son.
I was saying, I knew somewhere along the line those two had to be in the same film. Like it was just too good.
Yeah, this is. I mean, they're not Dracula and Frankenstein, but they are in the same film. Two films, which I gotta assume that they really marketed it as the guy who is Frankenstein meets the guy who is Dracula in these films. You know, that type of thing. I would assume that would happen. The Mystery of Edwin Drood, who I've never heard of. Werewolf of London, which the only reference I can think of is An American Werewolf in London, which I don't know if it has any connection with it. Bride of Frankenstein with Boris Karloff again, which, if you remember what the Bride of Frankenstein is, it kind of, yeah, it comes from this. Like, all the Bride of Frankenstein isms come from this.
Oh.
Like the giant hair with the like lightning bolts in her hair and all that. That's from this movie.
Yeah, right. That makes sense.
Dracula's Daughter without Bela Lugosi, according to this list, which is kind of interesting. Let me see here if it's actually this Amazon affiliate link here. Let me see if it's... No, Dracula... I don't think even Dracula even shows up.
Huh.
No, Boris Karloff is not in this film. It's pretty interesting. The Invisible Ray, completing the trilogy of Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, which actually there's 4 movies that they were in together, according to this list so far. Night Key with Boris Karloff, The Phantom Creeps with Bela Lugosi, Son of Frankenstein with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, which I guess... Okay, I would assume that Boris Karloff was Frankenstein in this film. Although Frankenstein apparently died. Interesting. Anyway, though, yeah. Tower of London with Boris Karloff. Black Friday. No, that's in 1940. But anyway, those are all the films. What's very interesting is in the 30s, this is when they got into the sequel isms, right? Like instead of just having one film and done type of deal, they had marketability with certain monsters that they had, and they went for it.
Yes.
But not with like Frankenstein 2. It's always son of Dracula or
a relative,
son of Frankenstein, the bride of Frankenstein, that type of thing, you know? Some kind of snappy title instead of just Frankenstein 2 or Dracula 2 or Dracula, the Invisible Key or something like that. I don't know.
Invisible Key.
I don't know. Some kind of random stupid name.
That's funny, actually. That's good. The Invisible Key.
But anyway, though, son, what do you have to say about all these films? Is there anything that jumps out to you?
I mean, this to me, when I think of Universal monsters, just in general, this is kind of the stuff I think of first. So, and I'm sure others out there can agree. This is kind of its most well-known era of existence, and
AKA the golden age, if you would.
Yeah.
That.
I was thinking that, but I wasn't for sure if it was going to be that or not.
Yeah, I would say the 20s were like the beginning, and this is kind of the golden age, because
I see
a lot of the big stuff kind of happened around this time, because I would assume that and there's my pooch, so give me 1 second while I take care of my pooch. Alright, there we go. The dog is silenced. Thank God. But anyway, one of the interesting things is that while some do take from the literary source, like Frankenstein is a book, Dracula is a book, The Raven, which is a poem by Edgar Allan Poe, is actually doesn't take from the original source material, and in fact is actually a person, Bela Lugosi, who is obsessed with Edgar Allan Poe instead of it's referencing the Raven rather than being about the Raven. It's kind of interesting, to say the least. And The Werewolf of London is actually, after further research, it's more in line with American Werewolf in London than previously realized. But yeah. And Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi were in apparently 4 films together. But it was a trilogy in the 30s. It was big. It was grand. They were just kind of doing whatever they wanted to. I think, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe it's because the ratings board was a little bit more loose back then. I know it was loose in the 20s because that's where we got the famous song Marijuana. Which is like a big grand 1920s song ballad from Marijuana. So I think they started cracking down in the 30s and really cracked down in the 40s because World War II happened.
Yes.
Which brings us to the next age, the 40s. Son, you have anything else to say about this golden age of this? Which, by the way...
Not really, but by the way.
Yeah, there's 2 big monsters here that didn't get any sequels, which is kind of interesting. It was The Mummy, which I don't think The Mummy got a sequel in the 30s, and The Invisible Man, which are pretty big, Universal monsters and all that.
Yes, that is true.
It's actually pretty interesting that they wouldn't pump that. But also, I guess Bela Lugosi was Dracula once and never again, which is kind of interesting. That's probably why he didn't return for Dracula's daughter. Kind of interesting. If I remember my research about Bela Lugosi correctly.
Yes.
But yeah, so let's move on to the 40s, shall we?
Let's do it.
This
is
the sequel year, the sequel decade. Because there are, and this is the sequel decade, this is the remake decade, this is the crossover decade, this is just every decade, this is a lot of this decade, basically.
This is the decade.
This is the
How about
decade
that?
of decades here, okay?
Wowee, folks.
This is the start of something that's going to be shown quite a bit in the 50s and kind of make this fizzle out. It's kind of the Silver Age, if you will.
I could see that.
So, yeah, you ready for this list? Because I don't
Oh,
even
I'm
know how
ready.
many there are. Let me count how many there are here. So, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. We're only in 1945, folks.
Ah,
31,
Okay.
32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39. Oh, wait. 37, 36. Okay, 36 films. Ladies and gentlemen. My gosh. They were pumping these things out.
yeah, I'd say they were. That's-
Ooh, boy.
wow.
Oh, yeah. So, what do you have to say about that, son? It's more than Marvel's making.
Yeah, I'm guessing they were going for the quantity over quality approach at this point. That I get that feeling. I don't know if it's true, but I can sense it.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I figured. Oops.
They, well, there's a lot that works.
Okay.
I mean, there's some monsters that make their appearance here. This is where we get the Universal Monsters like crossover type of thing. Let's just dive into it, shall we? Let's just dive into
go.
all this.
Sure.
Here we go. Let's
All right.
And it's also kind of where the I mean, the special effects for these films were pretty decent in the 30s, but this is where they kind of shine better in the 40s, right?
Oh,
Just gonna take this thing off. This mic. Because it's not helping. I need to get more duct tape for this mic.
oh.
It's a good mic, but it's kind of falling apart. But anyway, though,
Ah.
we've got Black Friday, aka the last movie with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi together, I think. Unless something else happens. The Invisible Man Returns. The first Invisible Man sequel. The Invisible Woman, aka... which is kind of interesting because they're both released in the same year. The Mummy's Hand. Man-Made Monster. The Wolf Man, aka... basically werewolves.
Okay.
The Mad Doctor of Market Street. The Black Cat with Bela Lugosi. Horror Island.
Bela Lugosi? Is it? Wait. That's the title? The
No.
Bela Lugosi?
No,
Oh.
The Black Cat with Bela Lugosi.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say.
Yeah,
What?
they might as well. I mean, but
Yeah, for real.
Horror Island, The Ghost of Frankenstein with Bela Lugosi in it.
Of course.
Night Monster with Bela Lugosi in it. Invisible Agent, which I would assume. Let me
big
just
deal.
double check here. If it's true, yeah, it's part of the Invisible Man universe. The Mummy's Tomb. Frankenstein meets the Wolfman with Bela Lugosi again. Phantom of the Opera. Son of Dracula. Captive Wild Women. The Mad Ghoul. Calling Dr. Death. Weird Woman. Dead Man's Eyes. The Climax with Boris Karloff. Sounds like a porn, but we'll talk about that. House of Frankenstein with Boris Karloff. The Invisible Man's Revenge. Jungle Woman. The Mummy's Ghost. The Mummy's Curse, and The Jungle Captive, and we'll stop there because that's a lot.
That's quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah, they are really, really doubling down on
They did.
sequels and stuff because there's 2 Mummy movies in 1944. Let's see here. I think there's 2. Hang on. There's 2
Really?
Invisible Man films. And yeah. They're just doubling down. It's kind of interesting.
Oh,
Anything you have to say about this right now, son?
I mean, they definitely piled in the films. I don't know if it was a wartime effort for, like,
Maybe
troop
it probably was.
entertainment. Maybe that, or they were just trying to get as much money out of it as they could. Probably both, but that's interesting.
Oh,
It's like there's a
yes.
lot of these random sequels that no one really knows of.
And we get our technically, unless it's something else in the comments below, but oh yeah, we also get 2 Invisible Man. Yeah, well, I think I already said that. Anyway,
Yeah.
we get our first real crossover with Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. And our first real reboot with Phantom of the Opera,
Okay.
which is kind of interesting. And this is like a true, not necessarily a true, not necessarily a true crossover, because Frankenstein in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is not Boris Karloff, aka Frankenstein, if you will, but close enough because he looks fairly similar, and I think he's supposed to take place in the same universe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
This is also where they're trying their best to like make more monsters in their monster universe and all that. A lot of women-based horror as well, which is kind of interesting to say the least. There's weird women, jungle women. Don't necessarily think it was that effective because I don't remember hearing about these women movies, but who knows? They might be good. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. There's a lot.
Yeah.
And we're just going. That's just halfway, son. You ready for the next half?
Let's do it.
House of Dracula, The Frozen Ghost, Strange Confession, Pillow of Death. Oh my gosh. That will be talked about. House of Horrors, The Brute Man, She-Wolf of London, Abbott
Okay.
and Costello Meet Frankenstein with Bela Lugosi.
Cool.
Interesting. Abbott and Costello Meet the Killer, Boris Karloff. With Boris Karloff.
Okay.
Abbott and Costello. Oh, no, that's it.
Ah.
But yeah, that's. So, okay. Before we do anything, I gotta look this up. The Pillow of Death. What the hell is.
Epic. Beware the pillow.
Attorney Wayne Fletcher and his secretary are having an affair. So when Wayne's wife is found smothered to death, he becomes the prime suspect. As the police investigate the murderer, a psychic with questionable motives tries to contact the deceased woman. Soon Wayne begins to see visions of his dead wife, and other people involved with the case begin to be killed one by one. Okay. It's more of a mystery movie rather than an actual pillow monster. Oh, that would have been so.
But still, what?
That would have
It's quite
been
a title.
what?
Still, the title.
Yeah, that would have been
Pillow of Death.
so. That would have been great. I would have popped that on right now if it was a monster called the
That
Pillow
would have
of Death.
You think you're getting a good night's sleep, but you wake up headless.
Oh yeah, pillowed to death.
Oh yeah. Ooh, yeah.
But anyway, we're getting more of So I'm thinking this is kind of where the horrorness kind of started to dwindle out a little bit
Yeah.
because we're starting to get Abbott and Costello meet certain Universal monsters.
Huh.
And we're starting to get less monster focused films and more mystery films, you know, which is also kind of interesting to say the least. I don't know why they would go for more affairs and death rather than monsters, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is.
They're starting to go more toward the comedic route, if you will, which is kind of interesting.
Maybe to go along with those we're back from the war sitcoms.
I guess.
I mean,
But we're gonna double down with all that type of stuff. With and there's a huge history behind why Abbott and Costello met certain horror.
yeah, they met
things.
quite a few.
Yeah, but yeah. But anyway,
Huh.
this is also where Bela Lugosi kind of started falling off the map, which he unfortunately ended his luxurious film career, like pumping up heroin with starring in a lot of low budget Ed Wood films, which is basically the Tommy Wiseau of the 50s.
Oops.
And all that type of stuff. So we probably won't be seeing a lot of Bela Lugosi anymore.
Oh yeah, I'd say it's not the case.
Kind of sad, but you know.
Yeah.
And last but not least, we're going to dive into the 50s, which is far less. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. 21 films. Less, but certainly still a lot.
Huh.
You ready for me to read this out to you, son?
Let's hear it.
The Strange Door with Boris Karloff. The Black Castle with Boris Karloff. Abbott and Costello meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with Boris Karloff.
Yep. Not Bela Lugosi, but Boris is in.
Oh yeah. It Came from Outer Space, but Boris Karloff is not in this.
Oops. Bella?
No.
Ah, toilet.
Creature from the Black Lagoon. Revenge of the
Great
Creature.
Pinball Machine. Yep.
Cult of the Cobra. This Island Earth. Tarantula. Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy. The Creature Walks Among Us. The Mole People. The Deadly Mantis. The Land Unknown. The Monolith Monsters. The Thing That Couldn't Die. Oh my gosh. The Thing That Couldn't Die. What a great name.
Yeah.
Monster on the Campus. Oh my gosh.
Oh boy.
Monster. What campus could it be, though? I have to look this up. monster on the campus. Why can't? Is there a Prime Video here? No, it's too good to be on Prime Video. Okay.
Oh.
I guess it's a college campus. Though.
I hope so.
Oh gosh. Curse of the Undead and the Leech Woman. Surprisingly enough, no Attack of the 50-foot woman, which is surprising.
Huh. Interesting.
But anyway, what's interesting about this is that other than one, which is the creature from the Black Lagoon, aka basically the monster, all of the real quote unquote monsters, I would say, are more in comedic films rather than actual horror films. And the horror films are more about sci-fi rather than anything else. I mean, you can kind of make a thing about, every monster movie is technically sci-fi, but there's a difference between Dracula and Tarantula, okay?
Yeah.
They go into extreme detail on how and why a tarantula grows super large,
Oh. That's almost just sci.
Oh,
Just like
no.
almost sci.
No, it's sci-fi because their science is very flawed. If you
It's
actually
sci-fi.
thought about that for 2 seconds, their explanation is more fi than sci. I mean, this is the most sci-fi ever.
Like,
okay, this is the definition of fi sci-fi.
Is this like beyond Ant-Man and the Wasp sci-fi?
Oh,
Like that's the benchmark for me. For sure.
I think Ant-Man and the Wasp.
That can't be more realistic.
I don't know. It's kind of up to your own interpretation. I would say yes, but it's. I would say yes, but to be fair, you could. To be fair, I guess you could grow a spider to like 50 feet, but you can't necessarily go shrink shorter than an atom, and there's a whole other universe in that. So
Yeah.
it's kind of up to your own interpretation,
That's true.
but I would say the sheer boredom and the sheer weirdness and stupidity of the science behind it
Huh.
makes these films worse. But yeah, after 1953, I guess Boris Karloff kind of drops off this as well, which is kind of interesting.
Huh.
Guess after 20 years, he was done too. Kind of interesting to say the least. These are more alien focused as well. It came from outer space, if you will.
Yeah.
And all that type of stuff. So, yeah, son, anything stand out to you in regards to this list?
There's a lot of WTF titles. None of them topping the Pillow Monster, but some of them came close. For sure. It's crazy. I mean, seriously. The Pillow Knight.
Oh, the Pillow Monster. Oh, man. Okay.
It's interesting how they went from something that was supposed to genuinely be horrifying, and then it just, over the years, it just got more comedic and like almost in line with the 50 sitcoms or something. What? That's my take.
Yeah.
Plus the tarantula. So yeah.
And let's just look this up real fast, and there we are. So, we're not gonna really dive. That's basically the it of Universal Monster Classics. That was basically it. These films are truly great in their own sense, right?
Yeah.
They're not necessarily peak cinema, but I'd say they are cinema. Like superhero films. Martin Scorsese, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Martin Scorsese says that superhero films are not cinema. They are. So, shut up.
Huh.
But anyway, so they're not peak cinema, but they are cinema. They've created some of the greatest films. They are some of the greatest films of all time, and they created inspiration for some of the greatest films of all time. Like, for instance, Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Great pinball table.
Oh, yes, but also
very high dollar, I might add.
Also inspired the Academy Award for Best Picture in 2017, The Shape of Water, which was basically the creature from the Black Lagoon falling in love with a woman and having sex with her.
Toilet sauce.
It's actually pretty interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, it's
the most, I would say, other than Lord of the Rings and, what else? Titanic, I think?
Mm-hmm.
That's the most, that is the most blockbustery-ish film to win an Academy Award for Best Picture I've ever seen.
Huh.
It's pretty interesting, to say the least. But
I'd say, yeah.
Before we dive into later Universal Monsters and what they did with Universal Monsters,
yeah,
we're going to dive into another segment, Hammer Horror.
Hammer Horror.
AKA almost the complete opposite of classic horror film, classic Universal Monster films, because A, there's a lot more blood. B, it's in color. C, C, they were doing this in 50s, 60s, and 70s, kind of 50s and 60s, although the 70s, and in the 70s, although they more loose with that. But 50s and 60s, when America was kind of doubling down on their censorship of films, Britain was not. And they were kind of reeling from World War II, so they had to have their escape. So what did? They turned to horror, kind of. And they had a lot of interesting films, which I'm not going to dive into a whole lot, but we're going to talk about some of them. Like, for instance, their first horror film was in 1955 with The Quartermass Experiment, or The Creepy Unknown, X the Unknown, The Curse of Frankenstein, The Abominable Snowman, Quartermass 2, Dracula, or Horror of Dracula, which I believe, Christopher Lee, aka who is it?
Somebody.
He was Saruman in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and he was also Count Dooku from the prequels.
Ah.
Revenge of Frankenstein, The Hound of Baskervilles, The Mummy, The Man Who Could Cheat Death, The Brides of Dracula, brides plural, The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll.
Okay. Just two Jekylls, no Hyde.
The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll means that there's a Mr. Hyde.
Oh, well, why not call it and Hyde?
Because I guess Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde were under copyright, so they had to name it The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll.
That's kind of toileting, but okay.
Curse of the Werewolf, The Shadow of the Cat, Captain Clegg, The Phantom of the Opera, The Damned. 1963, there was a film called The Damned.
The
That's pretty interesting to say the least.
Yep.
Kiss of the Vampire, The Old Dark House, The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, The Evil of Frankenstein, The Gorgon, Dracula, Prince of Darkness, The Plague of the Zombies, Rasputin, the Mad Monk. Oh my gosh. The Reptile, The Witches, Frankenstein Created Women, The Mummy Shroud, Quatermass in the Pit, The Devil Rides Out, Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, Taste the Blood of Dracula, Scars of Dracula, The Horror of Frankenstein, The Vampire Lovers, Vampire Circus, Countess Dracula, Lust for a Vampire, Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, Blood of the Mummy's Tomb, Twins of Evil, Hands of the Ripper, Dracula A.D. 1972, The Satanic Rise of Dracula, Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter, Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell, The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, and To the Devil a Daughter.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
More WTF titles indeed. Continuing from the last chunk of films.
Oh yes. Oh yes. And apparently they're still making films to this day. I guess they came back in 2008.
Wowee.
So, yeah. And they published their first film on MySpace.
Nice.
In 2008. Oh, no.
That dates it all right.
Oh, yes. But anyway, actually, that dates it in 2008 because MySpace was basically dead in 2008.
Yeah.
But anyway, anything that stands out to you, son? The only thing that stands out to me is Christopher Lee as Dracula, because that's one of the reasons why I want to talk about it, is because Christopher Lee kind of got his start with Hammer Horror and his Dracula films. So anything you have to say about that?
That's pretty cool. Other than that fact alone, they're still coming up with these epic titles.
Oh yes.
And yeah, they're something else.
Yeah. I would say these are a required taste, kind of like the Universal Classic Monsters. If you're a horror fan, you'll like it. But if you specifically enjoy the Universal Classic Monsters, I don't know if you'll like Hammer Horror, because it's a lot of them got a lot more like the 60s and 70s type of editing, which you may not enjoy.
Yeah,
but I'm a film fanatic, and I really do enjoy Hammer Horror. And I like Universal Classic Monsters, so there's that type of thing too. I gotta watch more. But yeah, I really enjoy a lot of these films and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
last but not least, we're going to end with the Universal Monsters Today.
Mainly pop culture references. In the 90s, lots of great pinball came about as a result.
Yeah.
And cereal. Not
yes.
the 90s specifically, but yeah.
Not necessarily pop culture, because then we'll be here forever. But
For a long time.
yeah, there were some films, maybe not necessarily from Universal, that were introduced to modern audiences, like Wolfman with Jack Nicholson and all that type of thing.
Yeah.
Like Bram Stoker's Dracula with Francis Ford Coppola producing it and all that type of stuff,
Yeah.
And actually really diving into the book more often than not. But here's the thing, though.
And it is.
With the rise of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they kind of they wanted to do their own Universal Cinematic Universe. Universal wanted to do their own cinematic universe, and they figured the best way to do that was to make kind of the OG cinematic universe, bring that back to life, if you will. And that and they would call it the Dark Universe.
Darkness is born.
Oh,
the Dark Universe.
Yes. Let me see here.
Nice.
There was one. So the thing was, this originally started with one film, then started with another film. There was this one other film that kind of started something else, but I don't remember it. And I don't remember it, and I don't know if it was the case, but there was one film, I think in 2004, when they tried to do something else, but I don't think that happened. But anyway, they originally started their cinematic universe with Dracula Untold, which was Orlando Bloom, aka...
Oh boy.
You know who that is?
Yes. Yes, I do.
As Dracula in his origin story.
My toilet.
Oh, yes. And it was bad. It was really bad. They didn't come out publicly and say this, but they wanted to do a cinematic universe starting with him. But
oh, my pain.
Yeah, but it stopped.
Wow. I bet it did. I just, that doesn't sound like it would work.
It was like in 2012, I think, when that came out.
That
but
sounds about right.
What everyone knows what this universe is, the Dark Universe, originally started in 2016 with The Mummy. And of course, there was other films that were based on Universal monsters that came out as well before The Mummy, like The Mummy with Brendan Fraser, of course, that whole cinematic universe, 4 films with the Scorpion King and all that type of thing. But
Yep. And The Ride, of course, can't forget that.
Oh,
good
yeah,
coaster.
that was great, but
Oh yeah, great. Where my coffee?
First film was great as well, but
That was
first film of The Mummy, 1997, I believe, 1999 was great as well.
Oh yeah,
The Mummy in 2017, starring Tom Cruise, not as the Mummy, but able to cheat death, apparently, with a woman mummy, which is fine. That's not the issue.
Okay.
You know who, but he's not the Mummy, but he's some kind of weird horror person that's not defined. People speculated that he was Van Helsing, but that wasn't supposed to be the case. No one knows who the hell Tom Cruise was supposed to be, but he cheated death, and he's like a weird vampire type of person kind of deal. I don't even know what the heck he is. He's some kind of magical dude. Some kind of magical Scientologist dude.
Yeah, I was going to say, huh. Wow. A lot of running.
Oh, he does that too.
Oh yeah, that's Tommy.
Oh yeah, but anyway, the Mummy bombed the box. No, hang on, I forgot. You know,
You did.
who was also in this film?
Oh, then Brandon.
Brandon Fraser was not in this film.
Oh, you're okay. Yeah, different film. No. Dennis Farina, I hope.
This was in 2016. Was he alive?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, exactly. Unless he was AI generated, which
He
I don't
might
think.
have been alive. It was around.
He wasn't in this movie, as far as I know.
Dun, 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 dun.
Russell Crowe. You know who that guy is?
I believe so. Russell Crowe.
He was Dr. Jekyll.
Oh. Huh.
And he was basically
All right.
the Nick Fury of the Dark Universe. Where he was collecting all these different monster isms, like the creature from the Black Lagoon's hand or something, and all the mummies or some kind of weird scrap. Trying to... Which I don't even know why all these monsters would unite. Why would these monsters unite? I don't know why.
Okay.
But they would, apparently, thanks to Dr. Jekyll, who can also turn into Mr. Hyde through sheer will.
Not like in the book, but okay.
Oh yeah, and
which we both read by force.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was Dracula Untold. So
Dracula Untold.
So yeah, so oh, okay. Now I know. So
okay.
Before Dracula Untold and before The Mummy 2017, they tried to relaunch their classic monsters brand with Van Helsing in 2004 with Hugh Jackman as Van Helsing, which that's perfect casting, but this movie was terrible. It was incredibly boring. Early 2000s CGI. It was awful.
Oh no. Oh boy.
They were
yeah.
So yeah. They were so excluding that with the Dark Universe, they were going to create a lot of spin-offs and movies like another Van Helsing movie with Channing Tatum as Van Helsing. Dracula Untold 2, which I don't even know why they would make that. Russell Crowe as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in his own movie. Johnny Depp as the Invisible Man.
Oh boy.
They would make their own Phantom of the Opera film and Hunchback film, which I don't know if they really could anymore because of Disney's movie.
Yeah.
The Rock as the Wolfman.
I could kind of see that. It's still
I don't know
if
he would allow all that makeup on his face. I really don't know.
I could also see that too. Yeah, I could see that.
Creature from the Black Lagoon film with Guillermo del Toro signed on to direct, which eventually turned into The Shape of Water. So there's that.
Okay.
Angelina Jolie is the Bride of Frankenstein. Who's Mina Harker?
I have no idea.
Mina Harker of Dracula fame.
Okay.
Harker's steadfast research that plays a pivotal role in cornering the monster. Okay.
I'll take their word for it.
I don't even know who that is. But yeah. So, other than that, there has been a sort of resurgence with Universal Monsters. Ish.
All right.
Very, very heavy on the ish. Like, for instance, The Shape of Water was released and garnered critical acclaim and all that type of stuff. They released a film through their Blumhouse branch, which makes very small budget horror films and generally gain a lot of profits through that.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it garnered a great success, and they're making sequels to that film as well, which is pretty exciting. And they might be kind of redefining their dark universe to be a Blumhouse type of deal, giving Blumhouse their properties and all that, and making films through that thing. And you know what? The Invisible Man, not that bad. Not horror.
Okay. Yeah.
More sci-fi, because the Invisible Man basically has a invisible suit and isn't invisible himself.
Kind of misleading, but okay.
Yeah, and recently Renfield came out. Do you know what that's about?
Not one bit at all.
It's
not a thing.
It's about a guy who has a close relationship with Dracula. You know who Dracula is?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Who's Dracula in Renfield?
Oh, you meant who played Dracula. Someone. There's no telling at this point.
Ding, bomb, bing, boom. Nicolas Cage.
Oh, yeah. You mean, Count Nicholas.
Count Nicolas Cage.
Yeah. Once you said Cage, it came back. The whole Count Nicholas thing.
Oh, man, it's Nicolas Cage. And it's more of a horror comedy, because, of course, Nicolas Cage. I mean...
Yeah, uncaged, yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
They are kind of doing their own thing with their Universal Monsters, and it's kind of working now. I don't know... Wait, hang on. Let me see if these films are what I believe they are released under. If they're under this type of deal here. Oh no. So Shape of Water was released under Fox, so that's not Universal. But I know The Invisible Man was under Universal, so there's that. Let's see if Renfield is under Universal. And if it is, it might be good. Let's see here. Oh, it is. So good. So they are... Shape of Water, even though that was based on Universal Monster, it is not a Universal film. However, the Renfield is. So there's that.
Very nice.
It's pretty interesting, to say the least. And they are kind of doing their darndest to make some interesting, good films this time, and it's actually working well for them. So hopefully they continue going down this route, because Universal Monsters are absolutely spectacular. Hammer Horror is spectacular. Renfield is... I haven't seen that yet, but I've heard a lot of great reviews. Invisible Man I have seen, and it is pretty decent. So as long as they can keep up the quality, Universal Monsters will continue to live through till the 21st century and beyond. So, son.
Nice.
You got anything to say about this modern take on the Dark Universe, if you will?
There are some hilarious actor choices that I would not expect. I may have to sit down and check out Count Nicholas at some point.
Oh, yes, I will be.
And that's really about it. That's about all I got, folks.
Indeed.
Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff in a nutshell.
You got anything to say about Universal Monsters as a whole?
Other than some great pinball machines in the 90s came out as a result, that's about it. I won't get too in depth about that.
Indeed. Well, all right, guys. That's it for this pod here. What do you guys think about Universal Monsters or Hammer horror films? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Which one is your favorite? Comment and let us know, and don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell. More vids coming your way, and hey, take care, guys.